come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale light?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli. Round up the usual suspects. I'm kind of a big deal.
Good debating, King.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And fear not, everybody, we got a lot of bubble gum. Hi once again, everyone. Welcome in. I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks for joining us here on The Man in the Arena, live on Facebook and live on YouTube, also live on Twitter. I got to remember to get that in there as well because it's easy to reach the rest of the world on Twitter, and now we are there as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget, when the show is over, you can watch it again on YouTube at welcometothearena.com, and you'll also be able to download everything we do on almost every major podcast platform. Well, no, every major podcast platform. A couple of little stragglers are hanging around out there. But iTunes, Spotify, and all the rest, make sure you get it there. It'll all be available to you later on this evening. Download, and what we invite everyone to do is like and subscribe. Those are the two key words when it comes to doing this kind of television these days. Make sure you do that. Coming up a little bit later on, a very special part of The Man in the Arena that will now be a part of what we do here on Fridays with our guest. And the end of the show, I invite you to stick around for something very special because it's what happens to the Bamburger. It's really just hang on and you'll figure it all out by the time we get there, all right? Don't forget, if you want to go ahead and comment live on Facebook and live on YouTube, the comment lines are always open. We welcome you to join us there. You ever snitch when you were a kid? Anybody ever snitch? I mean, remember, don't tell anybody. Don't tell mom. Don't tell dad. Don't tell anybody else what's going on. It was always a bad thing. In my neighborhood, when I grew up in Greenwich Village, you better believe that if you snitched, you were going to hear about it. Of course, your fingers may hear about it somewhere down the line, but that's another story altogether, which I'll tell when actually we're not on the air, okay? I'll tell that only to my attorney, who actually is probably going to be next up here in a couple of minutes if I ever ask for the legal advice. But we are now talking about a time in the COVID-19 era when snitching is a part of what we do in sports. And also, I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little sick and tired of grown men having to be told what to do with all these damn rules. Get it. You're a grown man, but that's another story for another day, at least when it comes to athletes. Let's go ahead and welcome in our guest. He is not just the Man in the Arena on Fridays. He is my partner in Outside the Lines, which we did a long time ago on radio. We were the first ones to do it. So there. I call him the smartest man in the room. Why? Because he is. It's just that simple. And he's still going to go ahead and make us all dinner one of these days. We welcome Joe Casale back into the Man in the Arena. How you doing, Chef?
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Good, man. I love to say that, Chef. All of a sudden, I feel like you and Gordon Ramsay, what a battle that would be. I want to see that.
No, he's actually a chef. I just cook at home. There's a difference.
No, but we have all, those of us who follow you on Facebook, we have all seen the amazing dishes that you put together. And come on, you got to be proud of yourself, brother. You can do that. Me, you know what we do? We go out and we tried one of these home units. We tried Home Chef, which is really kind of interesting. They send you the meals. You get meals for two. It's good. It's fresh. It's great. And you look at the bill and you go, holy crap, that's the shipping charge? Yeah. You look at the shipping charge on that thing, and by the way, if the people from Home Chef are listening, you had us until you did the shipping charge there, dudes. You look at the shipping charge and they go, please, God, open up the restaurant soon. We got to get them back because it's the exact same thing as going to a restaurant. So let me ask you then, as we dive into all this, in your neighborhood, because you grew up in Connecticut, not far from New York. We all basically came from that same area. What was it like if you snitched on somebody?
Well, the snitch line, really, that was the NBA motto.
No, but I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you. Let's go back to Joe Casale time when you snitched.
I'm Italian. Nobody likes rats. I mean, that's just the way it is. But the thing that I'm curious about with all these snitch lines and all this stuff is that who's going to try to use it for a competitive advantage? It's like if you've got the NFL, let's say the Packers are playing the Chiefs, and somebody on the Packers calls up and says, I saw Pat Mahomes out without a mask. I mean, what's going to happen? So I think it's kind of like another layer of security that the leagues are going to have to go through. I know the NBA, one of the concerns they had and will continue to have as they move to the playoffs in the bubble is that are people going to try to use it for a competitive advantage? Or are the wings at Magic City really so good that everybody in the NBA needs to leave the bubble and get wings before playoff games? But I think that's kind of, it's like this is sports, or professional sports, I should say, in the COVID era. And it's here for us for right now.
Well, let's set this up then, because those of you who don't know what we're talking about, why not? Number one. Number two, you're going to find out, because this comes from the idea this is the COVID-19 era, when people are being asked, if you see something, say something. It goes down to that. But if you see something doing something really incredibly stupid, say something. Let the authorities know. But you can't always just pick up the phone and call 911. I found it interesting as to what is going on in Canada when it comes to the snitches concept and where it has taken them, not in sports, but in the whole snitching on COVIDiots, if you will. Here's a setup.
Parks locked up, but in Toronto, they've been the scene of social distancing fails, leading to dozens of complaints.
We just heard a little bit more music, and because my boyfriend and I are in the middle of a move, we happened to be outside.
In Revelstoke, BC, Zoe Purvis was shocked to see a party across the street and called the RCMP non-emergency line to report it.
Played a little bit on my heartstring just because I'm being so cautious. They either don't know or they just really don't care.
You have reached the COVID compliance tip line.
Some jurisdictions ask you to report by phone. In others, like Newfoundland and Alberta, it's an online report.
Do not call 911 unless there is an emergency that requires a response by police, fire, or paramedics.
Now we're going to wear gloves.
Paramedics stand ready to respond to suspected COVID cases, but BC officials say some are exaggerating symptoms to get attention.
We can't be tying up resources and supplies unnecessarily. Especially in this heightened situation.
Many 911 calls are non-emergencies.
We cannot answer questions about COVID-19, and we absolutely cannot be taking complaints about long grocery store lines.
Yeah, that's what people like me are for.
There you go, exactly.
Some are confused about how to report so-called COVIDiots.
At the tone, please make your report.
Others creating joke videos of the snitch mentality, but Zoe Purvis says thinking must change.
I don't think it really is a snitch scenario. We're all doing it to protect someone that we know that we love.
It's working. This park in Windsor, Ontario, today nearly empty. Yesterday, it was swarming with crowds.
So I think what she said in there is fair. It's not a snitch mentality. You're trying to do it to help people when you actually turn somebody in. I know that there are people in various neighborhoods I know that certainly need to be turned in, these people who have these 100, 200 gatherings of people at parties in Los Angeles and New York and other places. Matter of fact, I think they should all just be arrested and the house should be impounded, but that's just me. I guess I've gone over the edge here when it comes down to a potentially dangerous and deadly virus. But with regard to snitching or telling people what's going on, there's the good point, Joe, because in society, it's actually looked at as a good thing. It's at, again, what I pointed out, that if you see something, say something sort of idea here. But now you have the NFL and the NFLPA getting together and basically telling the players, let us know if you see something. Here's the tweet from Mike Garofalo. The NFLPA today sent players a phone number for them to report NFL teams' violations of the agreed-upon COVID-19 protocols, sources say. Players can text the number, but they will remain anonymous. The union can file a grievance on players' behalves for perceived violations. Joe, I don't see this working at all. I mean, you're dealing with an NFL and players always going, everybody sticks together as a team. I hear what you're saying about trying to get a competitive edge, But guys, well, yeah, I'm going to answer my own question. Yes, people are going to be just that sneaky to be able to do it, but I just don't know if this is a good idea.
Well, I mean, they're doing what the NBA did and when they created their bubble, and the NHL too. I mean, look, you're going to have something in place to report violations. Whether it's successful or not, we'll see. But there has to be something in place because, there's going to, right now in the NFL, there's only one team that even has created a semi-bubble, and that's the New Orleans Saints, which took the top several floors of a hotel in New Orleans, and that's where the bulk of the players are going to be staying. And so, we're seeing in baseball, for example, how difficult it is to manage this. I mean, look, outside of a bubble, it's very difficult to manage. You have two private entities, the NHL and the NBA, who've spent a combined $250 million to create a bubble. That's not realistic in communities and school districts, and really not even realistic in the NFL or Major League Baseball. We're trying to play sports during a pandemic.
Well, let's get to that. Hold on one sec. I want to stop you there because, and there's been a lot of discussion about this. You're right. The NHL and the NBA have done very well in the bubble. The WNBA has not had any positive cases, and they're getting it right as well. Here's the question I hear from a lot of fans. If other sports can do it, and we understand that it is not an arena sport, it is not as easy, because in Edmonton and Toronto, for instance, in the NHL, you have a rink that sits there with hotels that can be joined together, and you can control everything into that movement in and out, mostly indoors. But people are saying, why can't the NFL do it? Are we just not technologically able to do it? It would seem that these guys can all stay in a hotel. They can all be sent to a specific area wearing masks. They can all play in a stadium. Maybe there's 2 stadiums nearby. Why is it so tough for them?
It's impossible. I mean, where are you going to play all these games? You're also housing 80 players, not 20. You're housing coaching staffs that are some 20 plus members, plus staffers. You're talking about housing literally 4 to 5 times the amount of people. And you need more stadiums to play at. I mean, it's not like the NHL and the NBA, they're in contained areas that have a couple of rinks nearby, that have a couple of gyms nearby. There's not a lot of NFL stadiums that you can have, multiple games.
But are there not 20 stadiums somewhere in America that can be set up for national television broadcasts and where games can be played on a playable field?
No, because then you get into the issue of lighting. You get into the issue of weather, what's indoors or outdoors. I mean, it's just not feasible. It's like when baseball was talking about trying to have a bubble in Florida and in Arizona. And they found there were 2 problems. One, Florida and Arizona became COVID-19 hotspots. And 2, a lot of the spring training facilities didn't have the proper lighting. So you would have to spend all of this money for upgrades, and you found that putting all the players in these places really isn't safe. And it's the same thing in the NFL. I mean, where are you gonna? It's one thing to say in general terms, well, why can't you do it? Okay, where specifically? Texas, COVID-19 hotspot. Florida, COVID-19 hotspot. You start running down the list.
Missouri.
And you're just not going to be able to do it. And as I said earlier, you're talking about sequestering 4 to 5 times the amount of people. Okay. It's not doable. And, look, I've been consistent since March that we shouldn't be playing sports, and I still don't think we're going to play in the NFL. I don't think, but I understand professional leagues looking to do whatever they can to play. Colleges, it's just not realistic at all. And I think we're going to see as time goes on, there's a myriad of reasons why not only it's immoral to ask unpaid students to prop up athletic departments, but it's just, this is a virus. It's a highly transmittable virus that we still don't know all of the side effects. I mean, we hear people recovering from this, but we don't talk about, are there long-lasting health effects?
But even though we say that, and you're right, but it's the same thing, Joe. You're right. You've been consistent, and we've talked about this since March, that it just can't happen. But the NFL is going to ram it down their players' throats. They're going to ram it down the public's throats. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure that they can play these games. They're not stopping. The death rate is still high in America. It still is exponentially rising every single day, yet they still go ahead and do it. So again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but I'm just trying to make the conversation for those people who say, look, we have to have it. Although, quite frankly, I think living is a lot better than having to worry about a sport. But there are some people who will say, I'm extrapolating here. Okay, Joe, I get it. You're talking about a couple of hundred people here. There's monstrous hotels, major hotel chains that are near a lot of these stadiums. The NFL's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You can absolutely put a couple of hundred people in these hotels. You can sequester them in the hotels. You can tell them to sit down. You can watch them. You can mask them. You can check them. You can give them their tests. You can then move them from hotel to stadium. You can have them practice. You can do it as much as you and it's outdoors, they'll say, too, to where it's even easier to get to. And you don't have to worry too much about COVID in that sense because it's not a contained area. So again, here they come with all the reasons why, and it is difficult for the general public and the fan to understand why hockey and basketball can do it and football can't do it, especially knowing that they're so wealthy and they could do something like this. And that's see, there's that. I agree with you. It's a disconnect, but it's a disconnect that I think is a reasonable question for people to ask.
Well, I mean, every sport isn't the same. I mean, and again, we're talking about in the NFL 4 to 5 times the amount of people you have to contain. Plus, you're looking at 32 teams. You're not looking at full teams in the National Hockey League and the NBA. There were teams that didn't make the cut, so to speak. So
True.
It's just a much different thing. Everything isn't one size fits all. And let's discuss the NFL for a second. They haven't played any games yet. They've already canceled the preseason. They haven't even had contact practices. We're in August. Okay, 69 players have already opted out. They haven't done anything yet. And, they're trying, but a lot of people trying this. Everybody's trying. Baseball's trying. But it's a virus. The virus is setting the timeline, not everybody else. And I think one of the problems we have as Americans and why we are the worst country in the world handling this so far is that we scour the internet searching for somebody to tell us what we want to hear. And when we find somebody that tells us what we want to hear, even if frankly they're full of shit, we carry it around with us and we don't listen. So this is why 5 months later, we're still stuck at home. We still have businesses closed. We still are going nowhere because we don't listen. It's we want what we want and we don't want to hear any dissenting opinion. I get this all the time when I write about this stuff. Why can't you be positive? Well, I don't see any scientific evidence that says good thoughts makes the virus go away.
And there's no reason to lie. Look, there's enough people out there lying right now. All you have to do is flip the internet pages any single day. You can go to any one of these so-called major news outlets that are nothing more than fraudulent places to spit out propaganda every single day. And all you get is lies. So, see, on that instance,
I'm a doctor.
I'm not worried about that. You're right. I'm not a doctor either, but at least I listen to the doctors. Hey, when Fauci and Birx talk, I listen to them. When John Schwartzberg from UC Berkeley talks, as he has on this show, I listen to them. Why? They've been there. And then, of course, there's the clowns out there, the deep-seated clown shoes who will say, oh, Fauci can't be right because he's never treated anybody with coronavirus. He's never treated anybody with cancer before, but I'll bet you he knows what the hell causes it.
But I had one of these online.
Ridiculous.
I had one of these online doctors send me a private message saying he was going to sue me for slandering him, and I actually sent him my address. I said, "This is where you should send the papers. I'll be happy to accept service." I never heard back from him again. I mean, this is the world we live in today. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's It's the reason why we're still stuck in neutral with this, because we don't listen and we don't want to. We just want what we want. And I think what's happening in sports,
America.
Yeah, what's happening in sports is that, look, if you've got $250 million, yeah, you can create a bubble. Good luck. And even with that, it's a risk. It's just, look, we're not handling this properly. And it's the reason why we're failing. And to go and take outliers, and the NBA and the NHL are outliers, and they spent $250 million to be outliers. And even with all of that, there are no fans in the stands. They're not full components of teams that are playing. It's more of a reduced tournament, if you will. It isn't ramping up a full season like baseball. No. When I say full season, I mean all of the teams participating. The NFL trying to have a full season of all of their games and all of the teams participating. I mean, everybody's got great plans, but, the plans go up against the virus. And I've been saying for months, it's great that the NFL wants to play. Thursday night football, the first game of the year, Houston and Kansas City. Players get their temperatures taken and tested the day before the game, and a combined 66 players test positive. What are you going to do then? Guess what?
Game's
You're
over.
not going to play the games.
Game's
Just like
over.
the St. Louis Cardinals aren't playing the games. And then it's like, this is when the rubber meets the road. And I don't think people have bad intentions. Like, I don't think people in professional sports have bad intentions. I think they're trying to play. They understand the dollars at stake. They understand the impact it has. I mean, look, in salary cap driven sports, if the NFL doesn't play this year, for example, it's going to dramatically change the competitive balance in the league next year, because unless the league and the Players Association agree to how they're going to handle the drop in the cap, whether to spread it over a period of years or just take the hit at one time, it's going to change competitive balance, because there's going to be teams that are not going to be able to afford to keep certain players.
Indeed.
So it becomes, I understand at the professional level why they're all trying to do it. At the college level, now we're talking about just being immoral to ask these kids to play.
We're going to get into.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna discuss it.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna see how college football gets impacted on a couple of levels that we'll discuss shortly.
So before we get to college, let's go ahead and clean out a couple of things here from the National Football League, because we've talked about how it really is impossible in so many ways to do it. But then there is another issue here, and that's the opting out of players. And we have now passed the deadline for that. And I knew this was going to happen, that as soon as we got a little bit closer, there would be some players or some agents or some sports people, whatever you want to call them, who would all of a sudden say, gee, I wonder what will happen to the player who's kind of the good player, not the great player, who decides to sit out for his family, and then all of a sudden when he gets back, he doesn't have a job, that he'll get blackballed, and perhaps indeed he won't have the gig because, well, he gave it up and went home. Here's a report from KPRC Television in Houston, which talks about the Texans, but also gives you a good idea of what we're talking about here with these players who, I think, frankly, have a right to be worried.
The NFL and the Players Association had ironed out details of the opt-out protocol earlier this week, setting today as that deadline, where players were given the opportunity to not play this season. Now, currently, that number stands at 64 league-wide, with a few more names expected to become official really at any time. Bills cornerback Tre'Davious White, who of course played at LSU, decided to opt out initially and really was criticized for his decision, but he said it was about family safety and the fact his grandfather had passed away from COVID-19. But before today's deadline, White changed his mind, so he will now play this coming season. The Texans have just one player who has opted out, and that is defensive lineman Eddie Vanderdoes, who informed the team on Tuesday. GM and head coach Bill O'Brien addressed the team stance today.
We respect those types of decisions and the process that goes into those decisions. We haven't heard that from any other player. I think football, especially in the NFL, you're always, you're never surprised, so you just, you see what happens. But, I don't anticipate that. today, but we'll see how it goes up to the deadline. But we've only had one to this point.
Joe, you've been around the National Football League a long time, both in and out on the front office side and with the player side. I've done so much as well. I have no doubt whatsoever that the fringe players in the National Football League who decide to opt out because of COVID-19, some of them will get blackballed, and they will not have their jobs back, and they will be looked upon as guys who didn't suck it up for the team, this stupid macho crap that always goes on in a lot of sports, including football. But I think there is a concern there, and I don't know if the union is going to be able to do anything, but I do believe guys will lose their jobs.
Well, I mean, I think blackballing may be too strong a term because teams that hold players, let's say, for instance, the scuttlebutt in the industry is a certain team is upset at certain players for opting out and they hold it against that player. Well, as an agent, you've got free agents. You're going to steer that player, your player, away from those kind of teams. And, in a competitive environment like the NFL, the teams that are, for lack of a better term, more COVID-19 friendly toward players who opted out are going to have a competitive advantage when it comes to free agents because they're going to be seen as fair and good guys, as opposed to teams that take a hard line. Everything when it comes down to players is going to be, from a competitive standpoint. And I think the smart coaches are going to be understanding and project that understanding because they know that it will help them get better talent down the road. And the ones that are kind of mired in that macho mentality are going to fall short. One thing about the opt-out date in the NFL, and one of the mistakes I think they made, is they had a deadline. I don't think there should have been a deadline. Like in Major League Baseball, there wasn't a deadline. Nick Markakis of the Atlanta Braves originally opted out, and then he decided after a few weeks that he wanted back in. I don't think there should have been a hard and fast, date this early in the process.
Then why do you think they did it?
Decision. Excuse me?
Why do you think they did it then?
Well,
because you're right. It doesn't make any sense. If a guy wants to come back in, if things get better, he should be allowed.
Yeah, I don't think they were thinking. I think they wanted. I think they were just. It gets down to this certainty. Everybody wants certainty. I want to know how many players I have in training camp. I want to know what my roster's going to be. I want this. I want that. Dealing in a virus, there is no certainty. And I think one of the problems that we have, of the myriad of problems in tackling this virus, is that people who either don't know science or reject science or don't pay attention to science are upset that there isn't certainty. There isn't certainty in science. Science changes. Science evolves. We're learning about.
There isn't certainty in life. I'm not sure I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning.
But I mean, we are learning about this virus in real time, and so it's why I wouldn't have been married to hard and fast opt-out rules. Because, like you said, what happens if 4 weeks from now we find a better way to treat people stricken with the virus? Wouldn't you want better players? Or 3 months from now? I mean, so it's just, look, everybody's kind of flailing around trying to do the right thing. Some people are, some people aren't. Some people are kind of, trying to figure out, what works best for them and not for the betterment of everyone else. And I think, again, we're doing the same thing as a country. I don't know why people are looking for sports to be a leader in this when our own government leaders are failing.
Well, there it is again, and you've said it exactly right. We're more concerned about what we want for ourselves. I want my football. I need my basketball. I can't live without my baseball. The hell with you. I mean, seriously, and and this is one of the things that I've just spent, look, I've been doing this my whole life. I've been involved in sports broadcasting since I was 17, one way or another. You've been around it your whole life. I don't care. Look, I'm thrilled as we sit here taping this show on Friday, August the 7th. I'm thrilled to death that there's hockey again. Although I got to tell you, the Bruins losing the first 2 games, I'm ready to throw a television set through the window. I'm right back where I used to be when it comes to sports. I'm thrilled they're back. But if they weren't back and people were alive, I'm okay with it. I can go on. I got other things to do with my life. It's that we're going back again to the entire arrogance that this country feels right now. It's me and nothing else. I don't give a damn. It's the masks. It's the drugs that don't work. It's the idiocy of believing everything on the internet. It's every knucklehead who says they know exactly what's going on. But again, when I talk about that, Joe, I can hear college coaches, football coaches, NFL coaches in my ear because they're all so certain they know exactly what's happening, and none of them know a damn thing. They're all guessing.
Well, listen, there's a reason why the only team in the NFL right now to set up a bubble are the New Orleans Saints, and that's because their head coach had COVID-19. So he knows exactly.
He learned.
And he had his owner spend several $1 million to create this environment. Does that mean that the Saints won't have any positive tests? No. Does it mean that the Saints are better equipped to handle what goes on with COVID-19? Of course, because we've seen from the NBA and the NHL that bubbles do work. Sure. They work. But again, the NFL, there's only one team doing it right now. And, they're rolling the dice. The thing that blows me away since this entire process started is just how many people in government at the national, state, and local level, and how many people in business, so-called leaders, are so ill-equipped to lead. It's like they're leaders when everything is great. But now all of a sudden we have the greatest health crisis in our lifetime. And how many of them have failed? And so now we're looking to the NHL commissioner, the NBA commissioner to lead us. Well, I think Gary Bettman and Adam Silver done a great job, but we didn't elect them to lead us.
I want to see their medical degrees too.
Right. It's like, no but that, it just goes to, and it makes me so angry that we are holding commissioners in sports to higher levels than we hold the people we elected to protect us.
Well, maybe that says something.
It's that imbalance.
Maybe that says something good, though, Joe. Maybe that's a great thing because that shows that the American people, by and large, actually know that when it comes down to leadership and actually making decisions and making them firmly and at least having some kind of a handle of what goes on, they know that sports coaches are better than the people on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington and the people in the Senate and the people in Congress and the House who are basically sitting there collecting on their fat butts, just taking a paycheck all the time, and they have no idea what's going on, and they're listening to people who are basically sending them things off the internet. So maybe America's not as ignorant as we want to say sometimes. They actually know the people who've got better ideas.
Only if you vote the people who have failed you out of office.
By absence.
But if you reelect them, then you haven't learned anything from this. And, listen, the crisis that we're facing right now didn't just start in March. It was years in the making. Sure. This just spurred it on, and it kind of revealed people in positive and negative ways. And that's why we're in the position we're in right now.
Okay. Well, we got the NFL taken care of, which means absolutely nothing has been decided, and we're going to go another week to see who does what and who actually makes some kind of a decision. Let's get to college football right now, because what is happening with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 is astounding in its historical inference right now, because you have players who are really standing up and players who are standing firm. They're putting their fists down in many ways, and they're saying, if you're not going to care for us, we will care for us, and we're the ones who will make the demands. Bomani Jones of ESPN, I think, basically put it best when he looked at what's happening in the Big Ten and talking about the power that these college football players are now wielding.
What these players actually may do, if you want there to be a college football season, then I think you need to be rooting for them, because what they're asking for are the necessary safety protocols that you have to have in order to have a season. What they want to have is some kind of uniformity across the board within their conferences about what is going to be done to protect the players. But also, one big thing from the Big Ten, and you just mentioned it right there, is an objective standard for when you shut this down so that everybody's not just playing this willy-nilly. So I think in the short run, that's one thing that can happen. What I think has happened in the long run, though, is COVID-19 has laid bare just how important these players are, and they realize this. The fact that people that they think care about them, and most of the guys I've talked to believe that their coaches care about them and are doing the best they can in order to keep things as safe as possible. if even under those circumstances, they feel like what they have is not good enough, they're looking at this and saying these people are not just willing to endanger our lives in order to play, but they're also endangering the lives of the coaches in order to play. But they now understand how important they are to making this whole engine go. And that's the part that can change the complexion of this, is that all this time off and everything that's happened surrounding this has really put players in touch with something they really hadn't thought of that much, which is just how important they are. They live in a world where people tell them how replaceable they are, and now they realize, it ain't that easy to replace us.
So here they are now, the Big Ten player demands. And this is what they're talking about. Third-party approval by the players. Testing of everyone who comes into contact with the athletes, including coaches, trainers, media. Testing twice a week with an FDA-approved test with less than 1% false negatives. Objective criteria for shutting down the seasons. Automatic medical red shirt for any player who misses any competitions due to a positive test or quarantine. These, Joe, are players who are making these demands. And while some of the things that the Pac-12 has gotten involved in, which is saying we want a 50-50 split of the money in the conference, that ain't going to happen. And you're also not going to get college coaches to take a cut in pay. That's not going to happen either. And I think if the Big Ten and the Pac-12 players stand on this and just don't move, and they've got to get everybody together. I mean, that's always the part. If you have some stragglers, that's going to hurt. You got to have the stars involved too. But I think if they stand on this, we are looking at a sea change in college athletics, the likes of which we've never seen before.
Well, we've been seeing it over the past several months. I mean, players are understanding now that they have power and they're wielding it. And the reality of it is, look, the biggest stories in sports the last 2 weeks are what's happening in college football with the players. Now, it's underreported. Even in the graphic with Bomani, the thing that humored me was the crawl above the graph. It was kind of like the yin and yang on where sports is right now. We have something massively important, which is what the Big Ten and Pac-12 players are doing. And the crawl above Bomani was, should the Packers sign Antonio Brown? And will Cam Newton lead the Patriots to the playoffs? So it's kind of the yin and yang of where we are in sports now. We have something really serious, and then the dumbness that has followed sports in way it's covered for far too long. I mean, look, the reality of college sports, I've said this now for months, it's immoral to ask these players to play. And the immorality of this extends to the fact that you already have leagues, the Big Sky, the latest league that has said they're not going to play this year. You have the NCAA ready to cancel fall sports across the board, but football. So explain to me why it is unsafe to play every sport, but all of a sudden it's safe to play football. And what's happening is the players in college football are making the decisions for the schools because top players are opting out every day. Because the fact of the matter is, it's not safe to play college football. These are unpaid student athletes. They could do long-term damage to their health by playing. Somebody like Greg Rousseau of the University of Miami, who opted out yesterday, probably one of the best defensive players in college football. His mom is an ER nurse. So do you think he didn't make an informed decision of opting out? Of course he did. So what you're going to see now, in my opinion, over the next couple of weeks is you're going to see a large amount of highly draft eligible, high-end draft pick college football players opting out of the season. Now, the NFL's not going to care about that. They love it because these are guys that are not going to be injured and they'll be available to be drafted next year. It's going to create a frenzy in the agent world because now what happens is when you get these players, instead of carrying them on your payroll for a few months, helping them with training monies and everything else, you're going to have to carry them for a year. And there's not a lot of agents who can afford to do that for a year, multiple amounts of players. So it's going to create this feeding frenzy of which agents are going to grab which players and how long can they carry them on their payrolls, because it's going to probably be lost money, because usually what's happened in the agent world now is you would cover a player's training expenses. And those expenses could be anywhere between $20,000 and $50,000 over a 3-month period. Now you're going to have to carry them a lot longer. Individual agents, very few of them can afford to do that. Even larger firms, it's going to be kind of a sunk cost. Let's say you're CAA and you carry 5 potential first-round picks, and all of a sudden you're shelling out $100,000 a month. You have to start taking pen to paper and saying, you have to start taking pen to paper and saying, is it worth representing these guys right now? So it's going to be a sea change in the way the business of college football on and off the field are done. But you know what? The players themselves may end up forcing that hand, because if top players drop out, Ed, it's going to make the other top players feel more comfortable doing so.
Well, that's just it. Are we at a point there where the players in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are making necessary moves, but they still need to make sure that they have the star players that are on board? You can't do this with a third of the team. You've got to do this across the board. And in your opinion, are they going to be able to get all the players on board to do this? Because you know as well as I do, there are those who are going to say, hey, look, I've got my time in here. I've got the NFL possibility coming up here. I can't afford just to sit back. If we're going to play, I'm going to play, bud. And I'm not going to just sit and do nothing at all. You've got to have a unified front. And I think that's the biggest concern is, do college players have the wherewithal and the stamina, I guess, the mental stamina to have that unified front?
They're showing it so far. I mean, 2 of the best players, defensive players in college football have dropped out. One of the best wide receivers in college football has dropped out in Minnesota, in Bateman. Listen, I know everybody waits for the quarterback. What happens if Trevor Lawrence
I think that's fair.
He doesn't want to play. But I think you only have 85 scholarships. If you lose 15 guys to a team and they're solid players, it isn't that you have 70 players left, because 20 of those players don't ever play. So all of a sudden you're down to a 50-man roster, a 45-man roster. Things start thinning out really quick.
Yes.
Now add some COVID positive tests, injuries. All of a sudden you're not fielding a representative team. And you also have the issue of college presidents. If the NCAA turns around and eliminates all fall sports except for football, how is a college president going to justify having football when all the other sports are shut down? It's a PR nightmare. And I don't think college presidents are going to go for that. So,
well, you've also got Title IX to consider in there as well. You know that's going to raise its head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see college football being played this year, and I've felt that way since March. Nothing that's taken place has changed my mind. I think the players now understand that they have a lot of power in this, and it's not like they're wielding it in an unreasonable fashion. I mean, they are legitimately concerned for their health, and they should be. And
I think some of the demands that they're talking about, as I mentioned, in the Pac-12, where they want to get half the overall revenue from the conference, and they want the coaches to take pay cuts. That's not going to happen.
You're going to get them. And you ask for those things doesn't mean you're going to get them.
Right.
But the flip side of that is, if you want me to play in the middle of a pandemic, then I want a lot of money to play. And if you're not going to give me a lot of money to play, I'm not going to play. So it's that simple.
So then are we looking at, and you just mentioned money, and I want to make sure we get to that briefly regarding UConn, because this is a program that is so heavily in debt right now, and they made the right call in many ways, financially certainly, but also health-wise. But I think the call to stop football for 2020 was simply because of a financial issue. So looking at that, and what we're talking about here, players making all these demands, the fact that you won't have college football this year, in our opinion, and that takes a lot of money out of the bag here. Are we looking at a lot more UConns? And I mean, there's even the possibility, our buddy Larry Bluestein, who's looked at college and high school athletics for a long time, he says he wouldn't be surprised to see BYU, a school that big, drop their football program simply because they've got money spread all over the world and they have other things that they're involved in other than football. He believes that they may go. So are we looking at maybe, 10% of the programs disappearing?
Well, you're going to, if there isn't football this year, you're going to see colleges reevaluate what they can do. Look, a lot of these schools have endowments They don't like to touch them.
Right.
It's supposedly for a rainy day. Well, it's pouring out. If you've got
it's a tsunami, dude.
If you've got a $25 billion endowment and you don't want to tap into that, it's hard for me to feel sorry for you if you say, well, gee whiz, I can't run my football program anymore. Sure you can't. You have to tap into the endowment. I think what's happened, and we touched on this in a previous show, since 1975, so we're looking at 45 years, professional and college sports it's been the golden age. Every single year has been better than the previous year. There are very few American businesses in our lifetime that have had 45 consecutive spectacular years financially. Okay, you look at where college football was in 1975, where it is today. There are no coaches making $10 million a year. Okay, you look at what's going on in professional sports. So now, because of COVID-19, that golden era has stopped. I mean, it's now not going to be a grand year. And the thing that makes me laugh is the panic. I mean, you have billionaires in sports acting like they're broke, which they aren't. You have colleges like Ohio State that have a $130 million athletic budget, acting as if, oh my God, we have to lay people off. We can't afford to pay them. That's absurd. Okay? I mean, listen, you've had a golden age. There are people every day in business, small business owners, having to make the decision whether they can afford to stay open or not. Okay, they don't have the luxury of multi-billion-dollar television contracts.
It's going to end sooner or later. It has to.
I mean, you're going to have a bad year. I mean, it happens to everybody. So deal with it. And again, we get back to the same question of leadership. There is no one running college athletics. The NCAA doesn't run college athletics. College athletics is run by the commissioners and athletic directors.
College athletics runs itself in many ways. It's that high and mighty. They keep running the train moves, and there's nobody at the controls. They just keep feeding the engine.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is you may see a quicker breakup of the 5 major conferences with the NCAA, and they just go off and do their own thing.
Yeah, I think it's time for that. I do. I think it's time.
It's heading in that direction. This may facilitate it. You've seen schools that are already dropping sports. The smaller sports, and you're going to see more of that because they're so wedded to the revenues that football and big-time college basketball bring in, both in television revenues and ticket sales. And without those, they're going to have to make changes. But again, it gets down to leadership. And if your leadership is inadequate, you're going to have inadequate results. There's a reason why the NBA and NHL found a way and the other sports are struggling. And in college, look, I keep going back to it. It's immoral to ask unpaid student athletes to prop up your athletic department. It just is. And I think if I was advising college football players now, draft eligible and non-draft eligible, I would tell them not to play this year. It's already been agreed upon that their scholarships remain intact. So if there's remote learning and you have to, you're going to be going to school remotely or whatever, you can still, facilitate your path toward a degree, but there's no way you should be playing football. And I think eventually that's going to be the decision because I just don't think it's feasible and it's logical. And I do think over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see more major names pull out. And the more major names pull out, it's going to force everyone's hand to do what should be, the right thing, which is not to play.
I want to close out college football in our discussion here today by bringing everybody an example of the reason why we continue to see colleges, major colleges, insist that they're going to play football. And they will do absolutely everything to make sure that they play. In Nebraska, the Nebraska Cornhuskers believe that they can actually put 90,000 people in the stands for an opening game after their first game on the road against Rutgers. But they're talking about putting 40,
Big Ten schedules were officially released this morning. Obviously, this includes the Nebraska football schedule. My first reaction, my first thought is I'm glad there was a schedule to be released, because as of recently, it was starting to seem like there might be a legit possibility that there may not be college football this year. It certainly wasn't guaranteed. I don't even know if my kids are going to be able to go back to school this fall. We're still waiting to hear news on that. So I'm glad that the Huskers will be playing football. That was my biggest takeaway from all of this. We're going to dive into the schedule here real quickly, but I think the state of Nebraska might have imploded, including my head might have imploded had the Huskers not been able to play football this fall. There's a lot of money to be left on the table, and whether people like it or not, college football is big business. They're going to want these games to happen. So that's a little bit of a quick breakdown of the official schedule for the Huskers this fall. Let me know your thoughts. Give me your reactions. And by the way, if you ever come to Casa de la Carricker, this is what greets you at the front door, ladies and gentlemen. Go Big Red Noise. Remember to throw the bones.
The voice of Adam Carricker, who is a former defensive end for Nebraska. Duh. I have no idea what the hell that meant at the end. But there's the guy, head explode, we have to play football. And Nebraska thinking, hey, don't worry. We'll get 20, 30, 40, maybe 50,000 to come to our arena, to come to the stadium for the first game of the year, despite the fact that there's a pandemic in America. It's nut jobs, it's wing nuts, it's the Mensa candidates like that the colleges are listening to right now going, hey, we got to keep these guys happy, man. That's all the money. But, Carricker I'm sure he's more of a caricature than anything else. But, Joe, that's the kind of people that are driving college athletics to say we got to play football this year.
Well, I mean, they may want it, but they're not in a decision-making position, and they don't have a seat. They don't have a seat at the table. And, again, the players are going to control this. If more players opt out, they're not going to play. And I think as we get closer and closer to this, I think that's what we're going to see. I mean, you kind of saw the door open a little bit this week. I think you're going to see more next week. And these decisions have a way of, making themselves. It's the old thing when coaches talk about, when there's a logjam on a roster of, let's say, too many wide receivers, and coaches say, these things have a way of working themselves out because guys get hurt and other guys don't perform well, and all of a sudden it works out on the roster. It's kind of the same thing here. You're going to see if enough guys pull out, they're not going to play football. And it's just, that's the way it is. I think what you're seeing in some cases with some coaches is that feeling of they don't control a situation.
No.
And coaches love control.
They have no control.
They don't have the control right now. And that, but then you see other coaches like Nick Saban who have been ahead of the curve in this, even ahead of his own state government in Alabama with regard to telling people to wear masks, practice social
remember,
distancing.
too, Nick Saban has all his money in the bank right now. He doesn't have to worry. He wouldn't have to work another day in his life, and he's a multimillionaire.
Yeah, but I mean, none of these coaches are hurting. They could go a year, and they're getting paid.
A year, they could go a decade. Some of them could go 10 years without making a dime.
And if there's no football, they're getting paid. So that's not the issue. The issue really isn't the coaches. The issue is the players, and the difference in college athletics now from 2 or 3 years ago is the players recognize they do have a seat at the table, and that is the driving force right now.
I like that.
Probably, if there isn't college football this year, it's gonna be because of the players.
And I like that. I like that the players are finally getting out there, and people who always throw this dumb football player out there, you better wise up there, Sparky, because things have changed. Real quick, I want to get to Major League Baseball, and I need to get your take on this because we talked about it off the air, but this is just astounding to me because as we talk, the St. Louis Cardinals have canceled their game in their series this weekend because of more positive COVID-19 tests. And there are other teams right now, apparently on the rumble mill, that are talking about the fact that they may have some positive tests. But here you have Major League Baseball needing to come out, and this is all in the wake of the Marlins disaster, where they had almost a half a team basically got busted for it and wound up testing positive. But Major League Baseball has to come out with a set of rules. And, Joe, I'm sorry, but these are grown men. They know what's at stake in this. They know that it's their livelihoods. They know it's the game. So baseball comes out with a slew of rules that, for those who are not watching the show, I'm just going to scan over them briefly. Players wear face coverings at all times. Dugout and bullpen. Home teams must provide outdoor covered spaces for visiting team. Traveling parties reduced to essential people. Personnel must wear face coverings at all times at team hotels. Member of a road team, player or staff, has to inform the team compliance officer if he or she wishes to leave the team hotel for any reason. Home and staff players prohibited from going to, here's my favorite. Home team players and staff members are now prohibited from going to bars, lounges, malls, or other places in which larger groups gather. I'm sorry, but if we're this deep into COVID-19, into the pandemic, and you're not smart enough to just, everything that's in those rules is common sense. So you shouldn't even have to put it down on a set of regulations for ball players. Yet in my mind, many of them are just too damn ignorant. And while they claim, oh, we know, and we heard Scott Boras say this, oh, the players know what's at stake here. Apparently you don't. Because if baseball's got to come out and throw out rules that a 10-year-old needs to follow, that shows to me that there's a lot of players in baseball who just aren't serious about this. I don't care what their actions say. That's just me.
Well, that's because you're listening to Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred's MO is blame the players for everything. We heard the Marlins went out on the town in Atlanta. That turned out to be false. That story was never refuted by the commissioner. What the commissioner did was just let it linger for a week. He never backed up the players who never went out. The Marlins had an outbreak because the players were milling around the hotel. That's a decided different argument than, oh, they were out on the town. There's been no, so we start getting back to the same thing of blaming the players, and that's fine. I mean, we have Americans who aren't following orders again, and we want baseball.
So then don't the players need to be held responsible here?
Yeah, but the other part of it is there have been 9 rain delays in Major League Baseball this year that have exceeded 2 hours. So I thought we didn't want the players to have to be stuck in a clubhouse longer than necessary. Why are we having 2-hour rain delays? Why aren't we just banging those games and calling them official games and getting them out of the clubhouse? So, it isn't just the players. It is, do the players have to, kind of button things up in some cases? Absolutely. But again, that doesn't excuse the fact that we're keeping them around during rain delays. And in a couple of those games were official games already. So why are they doing that? We're beyond the point. See, but the problem that baseball is going to have is that Rob Manfred said earlier in this season that if we have a problem with competitive balance, we're going to bang the season. Well, we're now asking the St. Louis Cardinals to play 55 games in 49 days. We're asking the Miami Marlins to play 50 games in 51 days. That's not competitive balance. Not everybody's going to play 60 games this year. We haven't even discussed weather. Like I said, with rain delays. So we're going to force the players in this zeal to get 60 games in. We're going to keep them in the clubhouse longer than usual during rain delays. If a game is in the 6th inning, Ed, for example, and it's an official game, and it's pouring out, there's no reason to not bang the game and say, game over, you guys get back to the hotel.
That's agreed.
Okay?
That's agreed.
But we're not doing that. So what we're doing is we're trying to have it all. We want the players to do everything right, and we want to run things as if there isn't a pandemic. So you can't, but the two don't match.
Okay, so then let's cut the difference here then, because I'm holding the players responsible. I think that's fair, to hold everybody responsible. We try to hold everybody responsible in society, and we know that there's at least a third of them who are completely irresponsible and just don't give a damn about anybody else. Let's leave it there. But let's also then say that, are we not then coming to the realization, you and I have already talked about this, it's not like it's been smacking us in the face here, that baseball screwed up in the first place, just having a season, trying to jam this season in, trying to jam 60 games in, knowing full well that every doctor in the world worth his or her salt knew that this was going to happen. They knew that you couldn't control this. There's not a bubble procedure here. They knew that something like this would happen. So here we've got the backup of games. We've got players being forced to play in games at that level which you brought about, which talks about an ill-competitive season. So sure, the players are responsible for not doing their part, But this still goes back to Major League Baseball with this ridiculous push to throw something out there, throw some shit against the wall somewhere, quite frankly, and let's make sure it sticks. It still is their fault. Number one, stop there.
Well, I mean, listen.
What am I missing?
Owners make their money in the postseason, so they want a postseason. Where baseball fell apart was they turned a negotiation that everybody agreed upon in late March on what to do in the pandemic. They turned it into a mini labor negotiation and dragged it out several months. That's on baseball. It's not on the players. So now we get back and anything that goes wrong is the players' fault. You guys are out. The Marlins story really bothers me for a couple of reasons. One, it was wrong. It was wrong. Okay, those guys didn't go out. They weren't on the town. And as you know, in this online world that we're in, that story spread like wildfire. So it became urban legend. Oh, the Marlins, they were all out on the town. That's what caused all of this. No, that's not what happened. So by the time you find out the truth, the horse has already left the barn. Okay, so we're already dealing with that. And now the Cardinals situation, comes up. You're going to have outbreaks. It makes having a competitive season, a competitively balanced season, nearly impossible. So, do the players have to take extra precautions? Absolutely. And you know what? You can't leave them around the clubhouse for 2.5 hours, lingering in a tight space to try to get a game in the middle of a rain delay. That has to stop too, And so you're in that whole, it's the NFL is going to experience this coming up. It's not logical or feasible to have sports in a non-bubble environment. And before people say, why are you so negative? Optimism doesn't cure COVID-19. So it isn't about waving pom-poms. If we could, all of us would, because it's all costing us a shit ton of money not to have sports. Okay? It's not about waving pom-poms. It's about being realistic.
But it's also about the fact that I'm going to add something to what you said. It's not realistic to have games outside of a bubble in America, because overseas, the soccer teams in the soccer teams in Europe have managed to go by without a single positive test. They've managed to play seasons. Why? Because they understand the need. They're responsible. They're not arrogant. They get it. But if you throw it over here to America, where everything is me first, you last, that's the problem. This is an American issue, not a pandemic issue, number one. It's the fact that we're too damn arrogant to sit and understand what needs to be done. And that starts at Manfred, goes to the players, starts at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and goes right down to the person who basically has the house party with 300 people walking around without masks, or the high school in Georgia that's got kids mulling about in the hallway without any sort of protection whatsoever. That's the problem. It's an American problem.
We're asking sports to be perfect where we haven't done anything.
We're asking sports to solve America's problems. You can't do that.
Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. Listen, I'm a baseball fan. I would love to see them be able to complete a season. I just don't see how that's realistic given what we're dealing with right now. And I think football's gonna feel the same thing. I mean, it's all fun and games until you line up in a scrimmage and you start hitting each other and sweating on each other and tackling one another, and 3 days later, 36 guys test positive. I mean,
it's not hyperbole. It's very likely to happen.
I'm not laughing at it because it's a joke. I'm laughing at it because I can't believe people are so stubborn that they can't see that is a much more realistic scenario than opening night, Houston and Kansas City, fans in the stands. It's no biggie. We're all going to play. I just think it's just not logical.
We're doing the same thing here. We're both trying desperately. I know I am. I'm trying desperately not to use the S word, because my granny told me it's not polite to call somebody stupid. And I'm trying desperately not to use it. I'm using the word arrogant. more than stupid, which I think is a better word for it. But if you start getting down to brass tacks on all this, you have to ask yourself, I think Granny would look at all this and go, okay, yeah, I think we can go with stupid here. We can't stop ourselves from saying it because that really is where we're at this point. That's a terrible thing to say.
When we look back on this 4, 5, 10 years, and we have perspective and we're writing about this, the thing that's going to blow me away is how a bunch of billionaire sports owners convinced themselves they were so broke they couldn't go a year without revenues. I mean, it's kind of staggering. I mean, I listen to some of these guys, and they act as if their businesses will go under if they aren't playing this year, and it's like they're believing their own BS, and it is, it drives to bad decisions, and I mean, and we've seen those bad decisions so far in baseball because we wasted months when we could have been playing. But we wasted months because owners saw an opportunity to turn a pandemic negotiation into a labor negotiation.
Yep.
And now they're upset that, gee whiz, look at what's happening. This virus is actually contagious. Ed, did you realize that COVID-19 is a highly contagious virus?
Shocked,
I mean,
shocked.
it's unbelievable.
Shocked. I never would have guessed.
I'm blown away.
All right, we're going to try and end the show here on something positive for a change, seeing as we have drilled just about everybody here in the last hour and so many minutes. This was the breaking news of the week, and I'm shocked. Well, actually not, because most news organizations actually don't cover the good stuff. They don't cover the fun stuff. I'm shocked that nobody picked up this story, because, or story, 1, 2, 3, story. Most people who have traveled know that sometimes you're just looking for a burger on the road. Sometimes you got to stop and get a hamburger, a cheeseburger, and there's a lot of places to do it. Too many people think immediately of the standard joints. Here's a place that you only think about if you're actually from a certain part of the country. Whataburger is now going to put a truck together. It's ready. Whataburger is going on the road with their own food truck. I haven't seen the schedule yet of where they're going to be, but it has been decades since I had a Whataburger in California, and I am desperate to have one again. Joe, I know you've got to have imbibed at the Whataburger counter somewhere along the line.
Had a few Whataburgers. I'm kind of an In-N-Out burger guy.
There's the debate right there.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, see,
I'm an In-N-Out burger guy. But,
I'll be honest. I don't.
But both are good.
They're both good. That's just it.
The underrated one, Tommy's. The Tommy's burger, it's a Los Angeles institution. Okay. It's Tommy's with their chili. Oh, that's as good as it gets.
See, cheeseburgers and hamburgers are so specialized because there's so many things that you can or can't put on them. So I'm going to ask you now to put on your chef's hat because you are, out of all the guests I've ever done and ever talked to, you are the guy that enjoys the kitchen immensely. And I'm starting to get into it. Why? Because I have to. But that's another story. So then, Chef Casale, what is the perfect burger to you? Temperature too. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if it's perfect. It's kind of like
to you.
You want that that kind of smashed on the griddle, create that crust, add the cheese, American cheese. You don't have to get fancy with cheese on burgers. American cheese will do it, but you need that crust on the griddle. The griddle burgers are the best because if you take, you have to have a healthy amount of fat. So it's probably an 80-20 breakdown meat to fat. You can take it and ball it, but when you put it on the griddle, you want to smash down on it because it creates that crust. And then you let it cook for a few minutes, and when you flip it, that's when you add the American cheese. You take a top, you squeeze a little water underneath the top, and you cover it because the steam will allow the cheese to melt properly. Let it go, toasted bun, you're good to go.
But that's it? I mean, a burger and cheese, that's it?
Simple is best. It's not a chemistry experiment. You don't have to put the entire farm on the burger to create a good burger.
Yeah, but it's a great experiment.
Is to taste the meat. The idea is to taste the meat. I mean, I come from New Haven. New Haven is the first hamburger ever made was at Louis' Lunch in New Haven, Connecticut. Okay, and to this day, they cook it the same way. No condiments. You're cooked in side griddles, and there's no condiments. You go there and ask for ketchup, they throw you out. There's no condiments. It's cheese spread, a slice of onion, burger on white bread too, white toasted bread, because this way you're tasting the meat. You don't want to taste everything else. You want to taste the meat.
I'm so disappointed. I mean, you and all the things that you cook and make and the pictures you put on your Facebook page. Man, here I'm thinking that you were going to come up with something which was going to blow our minds with just something unique.
Simple. It's called a burger. It's not called a lettuce, a tomato, a cabbage patch. It's not called all this other stuff. It's a burger. You want to taste the meat.
Sure,
and
you
best
do.
Burgers,
but if the meat
you
is
can taste the meat.
First of all, what you've done is you've killed the meat. When you're grilling it at that point and you're charring the damn meat, you're killing it. It's got to come out medium rare. You're overdoing right there. First mistake. And then you take medium rare and you put a cheese on it. You can make anything, a good provolone. I love a double slice of provolone, slice of really good beefsteak tomato, some spinach leaves on it.
You want a country club burger. You want to keep your pinky off the Sam Adams bottle. I mean, that's not a burger.
What's wrong with that? Yes, but come on, you can't overcook a burger. You've done, that's the first sin. If I overcooked a burger in my house, I mean, Lady Shannon is on it. She's taking it. It would be sailing across the kitchen to me, going, "Here is a hockey puck. Take it and go play."
What burgers are not cooked medium rare?
Well, but if you go to a fast food joint, you're not expecting anything more than a fast food burger in and of itself. But I'm talking about the burger you make at home.
And Whataburgers and In-N-Out and Shake Shack, and Company Burger in New Orleans, those are serious burgers, and they're considered, fast food, and they're still really, really good.
See, I would rather eat. I would rather eat asphalt.
That try to kick up burgers at a different level, but if I wanted to pay $28 for a burger, I'd order a steak.
See, I'd rather eat asphalt than eat Steak and Shake or Steak Shack, whatever it is. Those two, so they're awful. I mean, there's a good reason why Steak and Shake went out of business, because their burgers sucked. I mean, they were the kind of burgers that you had them, and 3 days later, they're kind of in the back of your belly going, "Hello, hello, we're still here. We haven't left yet." So I want to experiment a little with my burger. Every time a burger comes out, we put a little something different on it, and there's also an onion slice I got to have, and pickle. How can you not put pickle on a burger?
You just want to kill it. You're going to have a funeral service for the burger. I mean, you're just killing it.
But if the meat is good and if it's well seasoned, then the meat
you
comes
don't need
through
all the
everything.
other things on it. You want to taste the meat. So instead, you're going to load it up with all this other crap, and you're going to lose the taste of the meat, and you're going to taste all the condiments instead. It's just weak. That's weak sauce.
It goes together, man. It all comes together. It's a marvelous symphony.
Some things that just don't go together.
It's a symphony. So what then?
Next, you're going to tell me you want ketchup on your hot dog too.
No, right? no.
Thank God.
Absolutely not, Consigliere. That stops right there.
What a relief.
I think that anybody who puts ketchup on a hot dog, I think that's communist. Absolutely, right. Without question. And Shannon does it. She loves ketchup on her hot dog. We have this argument all the time. To me, ketchup,
you can't do that.
It's never the twain shall meet. Burger, ketchup, hot dog, mustard. That's it. Now, I will say this, though, that a good Chicago dog, when it has all the onions on it and has the pickle and has the jalapeno on it, has the peppers and all that, and and that's something special. And there's also, I think, a little ketchup they put on that burger, which
No, poppy seed bun, too.
Poppy seed bun.
Poppy bun in
That's
Chicago.
right.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to have to, when all this is done, we are going to have some kind of a burger cook-off here and get something going, because we are so opposite. You and I are so alike in so many ways. We have just found that diametric opposition that we have.
You want a country club burger.
I want a burger that has imagination.
You want all this stuff on a burger. Why don't you just order a Whopper then? Because it can have all this stuff on a Whopper.
But a Whopper has been sitting there. It's frozen. I don't want frozen beef. You want it fresh. That's why I'm saying.
Got to taste the meat.
Look, even Gordon Ramsay says that you got to put things on a burger.
We're going to listen to a British guy.
Why not? He's as American as anybody else these days.
Name 3 good British burger places. Good Lord. The guy that moved to Los Angeles to eat a burger.
Okay.
He probably lives at Thomas.
Okay. So when Whataburger comes around, I mean, I'm hoping that it comes to Florida, although I don't know why anybody would want to come to Florida these days.
They used to have one in Fort Lauderdale, but then it closed. It was on Federal Highway.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
They had a Whataburger here. But I will absolutely try it. So there you go, everybody. Don't forget, I just want to, and if anybody finds out, and if you have, for instance, let's say that the Whataburger truck shows up in your area, I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to, I don't care how you want to get something to me here, but you have to let me know that it's here. There's my Facebook and the Twitter. It's at Berliner Speaks. Send some kind of an idea here telling me that it's here, because I do not want the Whataburger truck to leave before I get to it, because that at least is a taste of civilization in California. That'll beat Florida's ass any day. That's another story altogether. All right, Mr. Casale, we'll continue to look for all of your well-made confections, if you will, and things out of your kitchen. But man, oh man, oh man, we are gonna have a burger war one of these days. That's an absolute guarantee. All right, boss, take care. Have a cheeseburger. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ed. Have a good weekend.
All right, buddy. There you go. See, we've decided that when the chef comes in here, we got to talk a little food at the end of every show. Why? Simply because he's good at it, and it's a little fun, and food goes with sports anyway. In just a couple of seconds, you're going to learn about the worst burger in America, what possibly could have been the worst, and you can't get it anymore. And maybe that's a good thing. And don't forget to make sure that you catch us on YouTube, catch us on Facebook, catch us on Twitter Live, and also you can get a hold of me all the time, Facebook, Twitter as well. And in case you're wondering, too, I'll go ahead and pop it up here again, because if you want to send an email along, my ticket to the arena at gmail.com is a great way to get in touch with us. When you go to YouTube, all I will ask is please subscribe to the YouTube page and help us along. We want to hit 1,000 subscribers soon. We want to make sure that we are the show that you go to make sure you have a little fun and get some good conversation. For Joe Casale, I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Be safe, be healthy. Join us again next week. Rock on, true believers. Until then, have a good cheeseburger. Make it medium rare. See ya.
Who wants the bomb next?
Everyone loves the bomb. That's one of our house specialties. We're definitely going to enjoy that one.
The bomb burger?
Wow. Nice toasted bun. Where's the burger? Ah, there she is. There is the burger. Fucking hell.
You probably won't like that either.
How is everything?
Bad. Does anyone season food in there?
Season it?
Yeah, salt, pepper.
We don't add anything to it when...
Wow, the meat's really chewy. It's chewy as hell. We asked the chef to taste that.
Okay.
Damn. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jesus.
He said the burger is really chewy. He said try it.
It's great.
It's chewy?
Uh-huh. That's weird.
It says on the menu, the way Mum used to make. That has to be the biggest insult to every mother in America.